Okay, welcome. I'm just going to do a presentation about the concept that the obesity epidemic is caused by our culture. It's not caused by us as individuals. It's not caused by us being at any problem. It's the culture. It's the greedy corporations. And I'm
Can I
just going
pause you
to.
for a sec?
Mhm.
When you were talking about the book Stolen Focus, you said something very quickly about there's an analogy to obesity in there.
Well, the book is about technology. The
Okay.
focus of the book is how social media is preventing people from living a real life. And then in parts of it, he sort of says, there are things. Anyway, you'll see when I come into some of the things. So the book Stolen
Okay.
Focus, it was just published in January of this year. It's got like, I think there's like 80 people on the waiting list to get London Public, but London Public has this one, they call it Express. And if you happen to walk into a branch and they happen to have a book there, you can get for 7 days, and so I'm just lucked up. It's another book I probably will end up buying, but it's just I'm trying not to buy any more books because I have so many. But anyway, this is a fantastic book, Johann Hari, and you can see some of his videos. He's just great. So this was one of the quotes he has, I thought. So I was going to try and put on the actual words of the people involved, but I think by the time I try to figure out how to make sure the sound comes and everything, I just will just read it. So this is what this guy named Professor Joel Nigg said on page 11. And if you go to that website, stolenfocusbook.com /audio, you can go down and actually listen to his words. So compare our rising attention problems, because the book is about attention and social media hijacking people's lives, to our rising obesity rates. 50 years ago, there was very little obesity. Today, it's endemic. And this is not because we suddenly became greedy or self-indulgent. Obesity is not a medical epidemic. It's a social epidemic. And that's really at odds with how we've been brainwashed to feel that if we're overweight, it's our fault. And so that's what this guy named Joel Nigg said. So we have bad food. So it doesn't take much to realize how corrupt the food industry is. People are getting fat. The way we live has changed dramatically in the last 50 years. Our food supply has changed. We've built cities that are hard to walk in or bike around. Changes in our environment have led to changes in our bodies. The emphasis is mine, not from him. And something similar is happening with changes in our attention, our ability to focus. And he's comparing all the changes happening in our environment for our food and everything with what's happening with social media. And that's what the whole book is about. And one of the guys he interviews, this is the guy he had the biggest controversy with, is a guy named Nur El, however it's pronounced. And he's a Silicon Valley multimillionaire who has created lots of apps, and he's written several books for tech developers. And what he says is disgusting. Anyway, this is what he wrote in his book for the other techie kind of people. We are all in the persuasion business. Innovators, like technology innovators, social media innovators, build products to persuade people to do what we want them to do. Like Facebook, everybody's addicted to Facebook. The real customer for Facebook are the businesses, the corporations who pay for all this data that we willingly hand out. Anyway, it was interesting. We call these people who are like you and I users. And what do you call drug addicts? Users. So that's the attitude of the people at very high levels in the technology industry. And he says, in order to succeed in technology, it's all variations of mind manipulation. So the goal is to create a craving, to create an internal trigger, to keep the user coming back again and again. So he's talking about social media, but it's the same thing for food, processed food. Fear is a powerful internal trigger. We can design a solution to help calm the fear. So they create the fear, and then they create a product to calm the fear. And that by creating the fear, they make their market grow bigger and bigger and bigger. So once you've succeeded in playing on feelings like this, developing the fear, a habit is formed. The user is automatically triggered to use the product during routine events. So they describe, people standing in line. They're too bored if they stand in line, so they have to be on their phone. They have to be texting, no matter what they do. He describes going to at one point he describes taking his godson to Graceland to see Elvis, and everybody and they don't have a tour guide. They give you a phone with an app with little pictures on it. And he said everybody was so busy looking at this device in their hand as they walked through Graceland, they weren't even looking at the environment or experiencing it. So that was one of his examples of how people have been taken over. And then there's this, he called it cruel optimism. So this is by another guy, Professor Ronald Purser. And that's when you take a really big problem with deep causes in our culture, like obesity or depression or addiction, and you offer people, I think my typing's there, an upbeat language, a simplistic individual solution that, just pull your socks up. You can do this. You can turn off the phone. And you can't tell people addicted to social media just to turn off their phone. It doesn't work. It sounds optimistic because you're telling them that the problem can be solved and it will be solved soon. But in fact, it's cruel because the solution you're offering, such as for the tech industry saying, just turn your phone off. It's so limited and so blind to the deeper causes that for most people, it will fail. And just bear with me again, the explanation, the connection comes. So there was a recent best-selling book, he doesn't name the book, but there's lots, that tells its readers, stress isn't something imposed on us, it's something we impose on ourselves. Very simplistic, sounds great, sounds optimistic. Stress is a feeling. This is quoting from this bestseller book. If you just learn how to think differently, to quiet down your rattling thoughts, your stress will melt away. Your stress comes from a failure to be mindful. In reality, so this is from a lot of research that's been done. The top cause of stress in the US is lack of health insurance. That's not as much in Canada, but we're certainly getting to the point where it's hard to get a physician, it's hard to get on a wait, all this kind of stuff. The constant threat of layoffs, which Amanda spoke of before, even if it's in your own head, this is the fear, especially if you've watched other people being laid off. The lack of discretion and autonomy in decision making, having a boss who's a bully. Long working hours. Again, Amanda, you've been describing that in spades for the past month. Low levels of organizational justice. The people at the bottom will get reprimanded, not the people at the top if there's a problem. Unrealistic demands, unrealistic work demands, unrealistic family demands. Your stress is not something we impose on ourselves. Stress is imposed on us. So this is the Johann Hari's words. And he's saying it's in direct opposition to these books that were being, self-help books. So meditation can help some people. Oops. um, he says meditation's great, but this typical best-selling book tells you to meditate your stress away, meditate your humiliation away. They say it's bullshit. So by taking people off of health care plans, especially in the States, by reducing their benefits, we won't give workers insulin. So these are the words of Dr. Ronald Purser, who's in a management kind of professor thing. We won't give our workers insulin, but we'll give them classes on how to change their thinking. It's the 21st century version of Marie Antoinette saying, let them eat cake. Let them be present. While at first glance, cruel optimism seems kind and optimistic, it often has an ugly after effect. It ensures that when the small, cramped solutions fail, as it will most of the time, the individual won't blame the system. She will blame herself. She will think she screwed up, that she wasn't good enough. It deflects attention away from the social causes of stress, like overwork, and it can quite quickly turn into a form of victim blaming. It whispers, the problem isn't the system, the problem is you. So 50 years ago, as he said, there was little obesity. Then a whole series of changes take place. We replaced a food supply system based around fresh, nutritious food with one consisting mainly of processed junk. We massively stressed out our population, making comfort eating a whole lot more appealing. We built cities that are often impossible to walk or bike around, which is in real contrast to a lot of the European cities where levels of obesity are much less. In other words, in the last 50 years, the environment changed, and that, not any individual failing, changed our bodies. And so then what happened? Changing our environment, changing our food supply. Rather than acknowledge the wider forces that have done this to us, the food industry, the corporations, the greed of the corporations, instead of building a healthier environment in which it's easier to avoid obesity, we were taught by the diet industry to blame ourselves as individuals. We learned to think, I got fat because of a personal failing. I chose the wrong food. I got greedy. I got lazy. I didn't get a handle on my feelings properly. I'm not good enough. So diet books and diet plans became the primary answer offered by a culture to a crisis with primarily social causes. 95% of the people in our culture who lose weight on a diet regain it within 1 to 5 years. 19 out of 20 people. And so why? It's because this way of approaching the problem that the individual causes their own misery. It misses why you and I, so this is direct quote from the book, gained weight in the first place. There's no systemic analysis. It doesn't talk about the crisis in our food supply, which surrounds us with addictive, highly processed foods that bear no relationship to what previous generations of humans ate. It doesn't explain the crisis of stress and the anxiety that drives us to overeat. Diet books ignore the fact that you live in a society and culture that are shaping and pushing you every day to act in certain ways. A diet doesn't change your wider environment, and it's the wider environment that is the cause of the crisis. So he was saying what could work. There was a different way we could have reacted to the obesity crisis when it began 40 years ago. We could have listened to the evidence that they had then that purely practicing individual restraint in an unchanged environment rarely works. We could have looked instead at what does work, changing the environment so it's better. So there could have been government policy to make fresh, nutritious food cheap and accessible, to make sugar-filled junk expensive and inaccessible, to reduce the factors causing people to be so stressed that they comfort eat. We could have built cities that people could easily walk or bike through. We could have banned the targeting of junk food ads at children, shaping their tastes for life. So if all the energy people have put into shaming and starving themselves had been put instead into demanding these political changes, there would be far less obesity now and a lot less misery. So I found this book fascinating. I found these comments fascinating. Does anybody want to comment on how they react to these words? Well, we're of a generation, my mother was prescribed thalidomide. Unfortunately, she didn't take it. I grew up in the 60s where the tobacco industry told people smoking's good for you. I had friends that drove the Ford Pinto, although fortunately they didn't have an accident. All of these needed a lot of energy to change the politics, to change it so that tobacco, they're trying to reduce it, made thalidomide banned, made Ford fix the Pinto instead of just paying off lawsuits. So this wasn't the emphasis of the book, but I just thought these comments they had about the whole industry, about the whole incidence of obesity, I thought was fascinating. So Amanda
No,
or Linda?
I think it's very interesting.
It's a different way of looking at it all.
Mhm.
And a way for people to then start saying, okay, it's not my fault. I'm not going to blame myself. And then the goal would be, I guess, I mean, realistically, it'd be wonderful if the government took some action policies, make it illegal for the food industry to add chemicals that they know will hit our hypothalamus, that will make us addicted to their foods. Europe has managed to have far less of those addicting chemicals allowed into food than North America.
Mhm.
So,
Well,
Linda?
oh,
Oh.
Go ahead, Linda, go.
So Dr. Greger and others have reported before about how NASA was doing testing of food for the space travel, and across the aisle, they were doing testing for companies like Pepsi and Coke and P&G and whoever about how to make food addictive. So, like, when they say you can't just eat one for Lay's, it was true. You couldn't eat just one Lay's potato chip because they were putting chemicals into them to make them addictive. So,
and now most
that's been
processed
going on.
food. Yeah. No,
So, and
those
that was
chemicals.
going on, yeah, like 50 years ago, they were starting to do the testing for that. And they said, and that was one of the major changes for people was once you started with the food being processed, because once you started having two people in the workforce, and somebody wasn't at home making homemade dinners, that's when the big changes happen, because they even said in the beginning, like your frozen TV dinners were literally like a real homemade meal that had been frozen. But then over time, they've changed to being full of all the additives and preservatives, words that you can't pronounce. So now they're like the Frankenfood. So that's why they've become the way they have, and they become addictive, and they're fattening, and they
Mhm.
I- like it's just amazing when you go back to and you can see how the times changed and when everything happened.
Cheryl,
But
how does this strike you, some of these words? All right.
Um, I don't know. As I was sitting there listening to that,
Mhm.
I have no disagreement that the food companies have laced their foods with poison, AKA chemicals, to make you addicted. I think it's a combination of a problem. I think people are looking for an easy way out, and they latch hold of stuff that they were not educated on and didn't realize how poisonous it is, like they did with tobacco and alcohol. But I still think in some ways the responsibility does lie in the consumer. Because if we didn't buy it, they wouldn't make it. Because they're wanting a profit. And I do think they're using and abusing us. But I also don't think we can abdicate our responsibility for our own health either.
Well, I think the comment he made that 95% of people who lose weight regain it is very telling. And it's like trying to get people off of Oxycontin. Very few people can. A few people can. People addicted to drugs. Very few people can get off of them. They're so strong. And the question then is, what's in their environment? What's going on in their life that makes them so very, very susceptible?
No,
And
Well, I mean, nothing's 100%. I mean, I think Cheryl's right in that we own a small part of it, but the idea that this is systemic, that it's everywhere. It's businesses wanting to make money. It's everything that's added to the food. It's you can't drive anywhere without seeing fast food and easy food and accessible food. You can't go to family dinners, to restaurants and find sometimes healthy choices on the menu. Your family is going to, eat what they want to eat and not prepare food, or they're going to be resistant. I mean, all of that stuff makes it very difficult for people to comply. And much like an alcoholic, sometimes for some people, you have that one dish and it starts that slippery slope back again, which is why you get that 95% find it very, once they've worked so hard to lose some weight, they find it hard to maintain it or to keep it off. And then it starts coming gradually back on. And most of us have found that throughout our life. We've lost and then we gain.
well, it's significant too that, like he said, 50 years ago there were low levels. 50 years ago, if you have a photograph of a whole crowd of people on the beach, most were slim.
Oh, and what was the stuff like? Was
So
it
he's
last
saying,
when we were talking about China, where they
Yeah,
didn't have
they
certain
got
introduced, and then boom, introduced, and within a
Yep.
couple decades, they've got diabetes, they've got heart disease, you name it.
Yeah.
Diet can affect an entire population, hundreds of millions of
Yeah.
people
But
within decades.
right. But the thing is, we're all made to feel it's our problem. I
Yeah.
was the one who ate that chocolate and got re-addicted. I was the one who failed.
Yeah.
I was the one. And so you end up blaming yourself and
Yeah,
and yes, there's a
Cheryl's
certain,
right. We
you know,
still do put certain things into our grocery carts. We do
Mhm.
still decide to go through a McDonald's drive-through. There is a
because
little bit of truth
it's
in that,
convenient
but
and it's like
but
I'm
it's
so
not the entire
tired, I'm
story.
so exhausted, I need to take care of
Right.
myself.
Yeah,
And
I think what this book
if
is trying to get at is it's not the entire story,
Yeah.
blaming ourselves, that there's a heck of a lot more going on.
yeah,
And there's a heck of a lot more going on, and there's a lot working against us, is really what
Mhm.
that book is probably trying to say.
Right.
Yeah, and it's very hard.
Well,
to be
I
part of-
even think, I mean, they sort of advertise about how, London, Ontario had the first McDonald's
Yeah,
in the, I don't know when it was, like 1960. We had the first drive-in A&W. Well,
yeah,
yeah, but from where I lived, it was like a 45-minute drive to get to it. So in essence, those fast food places didn't exist until I was like well into my late 20s. They just weren't accessible. They weren't around. So what a difference.
yeah,
Well, I think there's a huge difference, and I was listening, JJ Version had some people on that were different than the ones I usually listen to.
Mhm.
And she had this, I believe he was a pediatrician. And I tell you, it was just amazing. He had documents of the brain and of the different chemical pathways and all of this kind of stuff. And he said, the addictive brain is chemically different than the non-addictive brain.
yep,
And I think part of what has happened is the food companies have figured out what most of us will addict to. And that's what they create because that's what sells the product.
Well, that's the research they did in the 50s and 60s and 70s was they knew that if you could unbalance the hypothalamus, then that led to cravings and food addiction. So they looked for chemicals that would specifically hit the hypothalamus of the brain. And in a perfect world, those chemicals would have been banned.
Mhm.
And they don't even have to list them because they're under preservatives or flavorings. It's like Bill Gates now is just raised a huge amount of money to create a company that will put unnatural GMO food flavorings into natural foods, even to make it make an apple taste better than an apple, kind of thing. And anyway, I just thought it was kind of a fascinating approach to sort of look at the fact, and you sort of think, given the political climate today of compared to say the 60s and the huge battle it was for people to fight to get tobacco at least, it's not bad, but it's sort of, you can't smoke in a restaurant, you can't smoke in a workplace, and that was such an uphill battle. If they were starting now, can you imagine that they'd even succeed? And I think that's sort of an analogy that at least having an awareness that we're being manipulated and an awareness that we're being used.
I agree. The awareness of what the big chemical companies, big food companies are doing is huge. And I think the other thing is, and I'm glad to see a lot of it happening, but the word has to get out that sugar is a dangerous toxic chemical.
Yeah. Well,
And
I guess we're the choir because we sort of know that, but I know a lot of people, my sons included, who think that's crazy. That's nonsense. You're nuts, mom.
Well, yeah, and you think about what we do to the kids, and you know, a birthday party has to have cake and ice cream and all this stuff, and your holidays, everything's around food, and then and a lot of the food is sugar filled.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
And even
if you have,
sugar would be one thing. It's the like fructose, the corn fructose, which is
oh yeah,
even more
yeah,
sweet than sugar.
well, and
Yeah.
much worse for you. It really messes up your liver.
Yeah.
But the thing of it is, we're teaching the young children, and I mean, I grew up that way, that sweet is treat.
Yes, and reward.
It represents love.
Yep.
Comfort. Yep. Yep. I mean, just before this show, I was catching up on Days of Our Lives, you know, my addiction with Days of Our Lives, and two of the characters were comforting because they'd lost their daughter in their show. She'd been murdered. It's a soap opera, right? And they were resurrecting ice cream sundae night. So they were sitting on the couch making these massive ice cream sundaes and remembering their daughter who'd been murdered and all these stories about Abigail. But yeah, it was comfort. It was the family ice cream night. So yeah, food is comfort. And I mean, you just,
Mhm.
that's fine. That's just one example. But yeah, I was sort of watching that and yeah, thinking that. And yet you're watching people eating ice cream thinking, oh, that looks good.
Uh-huh.
I mean, so we get it from
And
all.
and
Never-
also you're given this idea.
Yep.
This is how I can mourn somebody. This is how I remember somebody.
That's right.
And this is how I can treat my grief.
Yes, it's a way that we can tap in with our emotions because it's a
Mhm.
memory, right? It was a nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you think
All of
back,
these stories, yeah.
well, if you think back, it's the same technique that
Manipulation.
cigarette companies used, like with the Marlboro Man and the doctors smoking
Yep.
cigarettes because it was good for you. The same technique, and of course, the tobacco companies bought a lot of food companies.
Mhm.
Yep.
I think I was, Hans Selye, who was the one who created the idea of stress. And I had always been led to believe he was this grandfatherly, caring kind of person, this researcher who cared, stress could kill somebody. So this is how when I heard or read, I guess, that most of his research was funded by the tobacco companies, I was like horrified. And when I read the articles where they're criticizing him, that so many of the experiments that he compared to people were the equivalent to putting a person into a concentration camp and torturing them, and then measuring how much stress, adrenaline and everything's in their body. And yes, he was doing it to rats and to mice and to whatever. But the analogies, and he then extended it to say, oh, look, these animals died and had heart attacks and strokes because of the stress. And then to say that people, oh, you have a long commute, you can get a heart attack because of the stress of your commute. It had no relationship to the research he had done and everything. And of course, he was one of the ones who was telling pregnant women that if you're stressed out, a cigarette will help you to calm and will help your baby.
Mm.
Anyway, I just thought this was sort of interesting to sort of, bring it in perspective and just let people sort of
Mhm.
really, really look at the fact that not all of a problem of weight is their own fault. So if you become aware of how you're being manipulated, you can put yourself in a place where you can protect yourself, I guess,
Mhm.
to put yourself in a place where you see through the commercials. Well, Amanda, to see through, this is product placement by the ice cream companies who probably paid Days of Our Lives to
Mhm.
find something
Yep.
that you can then look at it and say,
Product placement's a fun game to play when you're watching any show.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
and,
You see.
well, that's why they called them soap operas, right? Because
Yeah.
they used to advertise soap.
Absolutely.
you know,
Yeah.
and there was that kid who looked at the Shreddies and turned it on and made it the Diamond Shreddies commercial, who's
Oh,
like
that
a,
was priceless. Yes. From
yeah,
Square
I
Diamonds,
mean,
yeah.
I mean, that was his first thing right out of school, and he's set for life.
Yeah.
But just looking at it in a different way. But
Mhm.
anyway, so when you,
But yeah,
okay,
but yes, it takes the blame off you. So at least you can concentrate more positively
yeah,
on what you can
Yeah.
control yourself.
yeah.
I think,
And
yeah.
to be able to
Okay.
sort of, before you put that, I mean, at least you control what goes into your grocery cart. My sons came home from the baseball game and they had this big bag of donuts because they were being sold off at like a fraction of the cost because the vendors wanted to clear them out. So they've got this big bag of Boston creams and all this kind of stuff. And I'm looking at them
Yep.
tonight and thinking, okay, I'm glad I made a big batch. Oh, and I made that video about that Hunza bread. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, but I was originally going to talk about that tonight. And then I read this book and thought, this is really fascinating. But Cheryl, I don't know if you saw the video I made about the Hunza bread, and it's a product that I found physically helped me to reduce my cravings for the Nanaimo bars and the donuts and the cakes that my sons put in my refrigerator. So at least when you're in the grocery store, you can then stop and say, am I buying this because I really, really need it? Or am I buying it because I just saw this ice cream on Days of the Limes?
Mhm.
And you've got the choice. You can put it in your cart and then you can take it out.
Yeah, and if you can have the presence of mind to do it, if you're in the store and you see something that you think you just can't live without, that you know isn't good for you, are you getting it because you really want it and you really need it, or did somebody manipulate you into thinking you really wanted it, needed it?
Yeah.
Mhm.
There's a difference.
And the more you make it inconvenient, then the better it is for your health. So yeah, you can say, okay, I absolutely have to have ice cream, but I'm not going to buy it till I absolutely have to have it. And then I'll go and I'll get a little tiny container instead of the big gallon gallon container.
Well, and I think
I'll
too,
eat it with a fork.
Yeah.
yeah, if you
Mhm.
can find substitutes, it
Yeah.
works wonders. I bought the Ninja Creamy machine, and I'm not a huge ice cream fan, but when I do get ice cream, I have to get probably the worst possible kind, high in saturated fat and all that crap. Well, now you're not going to mistake Ninja ice cream for ice cream. It ain't going to happen. But it tastes good to me. I know it's much better for me. I know I've got good whole foods in there. So
Mhm.
I'd rather have it because it's almost the same, and it is much better for me. So I'm willing to give up the other because I found a decent substitute.
Mhm.
It's different than when you went to Weight Watchers and you had I forget what but they had all these fake foods that you use instead of the real thing, and most of them tasted absolutely horrible.
Mhm.
And that just never worked for me. But
And they were
something,
processed too, weren't they?
oh yeah,
Yeah. Which is like the worst stuff you could put in your body. Anyway,
yeah.
sorry, go on.
Well, no, I'm just saying if you can, and I'm going to start. I've got Chef AJ on processed. I haven't gone very far in it, but I'm going to start looking at it more. But I want to start making her stuff because, like, I got a lentil loaf the other day, and it was just as good, if not better, than meatloaf to me. So
Mhm.
if I can find things that satisfy, that are whole food plant based, I'm going to be so much better off because then you don't get the cravings.
Mhm.
Mhm.
You have something that satisfies, that's much better for you, and it keeps you from having the cravings for the awful stuff.
Yeah.
You got to have something decent. I mean,
Yep.
using rice cakes instead of cake just never did make it for me.
Hmm. When I used to be at work, the Oriental students always had like kelp um, at their afternoon snack. So like the regular students would be eating potato chips, and the Chinese student were eating these kelp chips. And what a difference, which is
Mhm.
good enough. But yeah, there was once, yeah, a while back, my son wasn't feeling well. He said, "Mom, could you make some macaroni and cheese?" And I said, "Well, you buy these packages of, was it, the package, why did you make it?" He said, "It's not the same." And there was one time when we had just gotten home, and he had my children were maybe 11 or 12, and they each had a friend buddy with them. And I made some macaroni and cheese, and it took the same amount of time to make it from scratch almost as it did from the box. And I remember hit their buddies raving about how delicious it was. And it was like, put the water on to boil, and while you're doing it, dice up the cheese and throw in. Anyway, Linda, what thoughts are in your head?
You're gonna laugh at me. Um, Donna Eden I think it was Donna Eden had posted a really nice quote earlier that I wanted to share with everybody, and it kind of matched with what we were saying,
Mhm.
and I can't find it.
Okay, do you remember the topic?
Well, no, of course not.
Okay, well, when you find it again, Donna Eden's lovely. She's got such wonderful thoughts.
I know, and I was getting confused at first with Donna, what's her name, Ashworth. So
Okay.
I can't, I can't find it. But if I find it, I'll share it because it was a perfect quote for for us. It was perfect.
Mhm.
So, and now I'm upset that I can't find it.
Oh, well.
So I moved my screen and that lost it. But we'll find it. I mean, there's so much about um, um the addiction, or like what they put into food to make it addictive, the cigarettes. Um, my grandfather grew tobacco, and I know this isn't food necessarily, but my grandfather grew tobacco, and um, I can tell you that when you took tobacco just out of the kiln,
Mhm.
that was the most beautiful smell in the world.
Hmm.
When it had when it had finished drying.
Mhm.
Um, but when it came out of the factory after it was made into cigarettes, that was the most disgusting stuff ever because
Mhm.
of, again, all the chemicals and additives and that were put into it to make the cigarettes addictive to people. And um, my grandfather, he did have some tobacco that he rolled himself,
Mhm.
and that's totally different. The smoke was different. Everything about it was different because it was just the pure plant. And it's just, to go back to everything that if we can make it ourselves, it's healthier for us. And I know for some people, there's time issues and you have to do things that make life easier. Um,
Mhm.
but it's getting, I guess, down to price and label
Well,
reading, trying to find.
but label reading hardly helps if the addictive chemicals are under the umbrella of preservatives.
I know, but there's some if you can find the sauces, for
Mm,
example, that just say tomatoes, water, salt,
yeah,
like that's what I'm saying, like without the words that you can't read,
right.
then that might help.
Yeah.
Or
Well,
taking a
but
can of
it's
tomatoes
interesting
and
that
put
the
some.
the government was able to make it illegal to grow your personal tobacco,
Mhm,
but they weren't willing to make all the other kinds of things illegal or banned or anything like that
correct.
because they
But
needed.
my grandfather was finished growing by that time.
Yeah, I know, but they can't get they can't tax you if you grow it in your backyard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I found it extremely interesting, and I really don't know how it happened or why it happened, but happen it did. I guess because I'm trying to put together my final affairs, and so I'm going through family history stuff. I found out stuff I had no clue. And there is every indication that I have a strong addictive history through my family. I had no idea. Absolutely not.
Like, what do you mean?
I think from what I can gather, I don't have it totally put together yet, but my grandfather was evidently a heavy drinker and bootlegger. And so were all of his brothers. And some of them definitely were alcoholic. There's no doubt about it.
That was also a way to make money at a time where there were no jobs, where there
Oh,
was
yeah.
so, yeah. My aunt told us a story once. Amanda and Linda might know the area. There's a place called Fawn Island in the St. Clair River. It's up towards the Walsburg area. And anyway, it might be too far from Windsor, but of course the river at that point used to freeze over every winter. And my aunt used to be part of this group that would drive across to the States with a car full of liquor. And she was their decoy because the cops wouldn't be as likely to stop a car that had a woman in it.
Yeah.
But anyway, the story is that one of the cars that she was driving in it went through the ice and they barely got onto the island. And so she was saying somewhere just on the corner of Fawn Island at the bottom of the river, which is probably pretty deep there, there's this old Model A or Model T car full of rum.
Yeah.
And my mother, when she heard her say it, said, no, that didn't happen. That was not true. And it's like, I think it was, Mom.
Yeah, exactly. And
But
now
when you read about some of the early settlers in the early 1800s, I mean, they were drinking huge amounts of rum every year. Even children were, because the water was so dangerous.
Right.
yeah.
They drank amounts of alcohol we couldn't even imagine.
Oh yeah, I don't doubt that, but what I'm saying is too, I mean, and they had to hide it because it was prohibition.
Mhm.
But to have something be that much of a calling that you were willing to hide it and go against the norms, to me that's addictive. I'm sorry. And the same thing with bootlegging and making money. You're feeding somebody's addiction and probably your
Mhm.
own.
Yep.
And from what this pediatrician was talking about the difference between the addictive brain and the non-addictive brain and the chemical pathways, I did not know that I had that kind of addiction within the family.
Mhm.
And now that I know it, it's like, oh, that explains a lot.
Mhm.
And the other thing this guy was saying, now some things like sugar is pretty much addicting to almost everybody.
Yeah.
But then some things, now I can have a drink of alcohol, it doesn't bother me a bit. I don't care if I have another one. But for other people, if once they have one drink, they're going to want another one and another one, etc.
Yeah.
And there are a few people in this world that they can have a cookie and they're done.
Mhm.
That's not me.
Yeah. Did you ever read a book called Sugar Blues? I forget the
I
author.
got it, but I never read it.
Oh, it's a fascinating book. I mean, it was a long, long time ago, but they have a section in there where they talk about in the, I don't know, 1700s maybe, when the aristocracy had sugar plantations in the West Indies, and they started bringing, processed sugar into the UK. And people who had never, ever, ever had processed sugar in their lives just a little bit would react with them like cocaine.
Yeah.
And so all the healers, who are mostly women, would say, don't eat the sugar. And of course, the aristocracy wanted their people to buy the sugar and eat the sugar because they wanted a market and they wanted to, pay them with sugar instead of paying them with cash and everything. And that was his research was that a lot of the witch burning was because of the sugar. So
Wow.
these women, these midwives, these herbalists who told people not to eat sugar, the aristocracy had to have a way to destroy them.
Mm.
And
Oh my goodness.
so look up that book and that one chapter about the witch burning. It was I was still in my teens when I read that, and I was like, whoa.
Well, this doctor, whatever his name was, I wish I could remember, but he was saying about the opioid characteristic of sugar,
Mm.
and that what they used to do with little boys is they'd give them sugar water before they did the circumcision, because then they didn't feel the pain as badly.
Yeah,
I mean, sugar is
I know.
just such a problematic, and we've been sold a bill of goods.
Yeah.
I remember the TV commercials with the Lucky Charms and Cocoa Puffs, and
Mhm.
they marketed it to kids and told them how wonderful it was, and of course it tasted wonderful. So
And you
gotta
know that
have-
because of some loopholes in the advertising that the FDA put through, Lucky Charms can say made with whole wheat, as if it's a healthy product.
yeah, well,
My
it may be with whole wheat, but they forgot about the marshmallows and everything else that's in there.
my sister used to work at the Kellogg's cereal plant before they closed it down here in London, and every once in a while they would make stuff that was to go to Mexico. And whenever they had that, they had extra security on to make sure that none of the product walked off the floor, because like the Fruit Loops they would make from Mexico would be like bright red and bright yellow. So because apparently the customers wouldn't buy it if it was pale, because they're so accustomed to bright colors in Mexico that pale colors meant there's something wrong with it. That is,
Mhm. Yeah.
and the levels of the food coloring were so high that it would be extremely illegal to have it on the streets here in Canada. But
Mm.
they made it, and they took it to Mexico and did tell the mothers that this is poison.
Mm.
Yeah, we've been
Okay.
duped about a lot of things.
Okay, so if I go ahead and do some of the clearing, thinking that thought you just said, Cheryl, sold a bill of goods and addicted brain. We'll work on clearing that. And does anybody have any other thoughts of what really comes up from reading from this book I quoted? Or
Mm.
okay. So you can close your eyes or leave them open, whichever is more comfortable. I find when I close my eyes, I can concentrate and turn inwards. I'll have you take a breath in and hold your breath. And while you're holding your breath, I'll make a statement. While I make this statement, just really focus on my words. Really let it sink into your subconscious mind. So just take a deep breath in and breathe out. And think about this thought: sold a bill of goods. Deep breath in and hold it. I release and all negative emotion with sold a bill of goods. Deep breath in. I release any and all anger with sold a bill of goods. Anxiety. Deep breath in and hold it. I release any and all anxiety with sold a bill of goods. Betrayal. Deep breath in and hold it. I release any and all feelings of betrayal with sold a bill of goods. Criticism. Deep breath in. I release any and all criticism with sold a bill of goods. Discontent. Deep breath in. I release any and all discontent with sold a bill of goods. Evil. Deep breath in. I release any and all evil with sold a bill of goods. Frustration. Deep breath in. I release any and all frustration with sold a bill of goods. Helplessness. Deep breath in. I release any and all helplessness with sold a bill of goods. Invisible. Deep breath in. I release any and all feelings of invisibility with sold a bill of goods. Misery. Deep breath in. I release any and all misery with sold a bill of goods. Panic. Deep breath in. I release any and all panic with sold a bill of goods. Sabotage. Deep breath in. I release any and all sabotage and any and all self-sabotage with sold a bill of goods. Shock. Deep breath in. I release any and all shock with sold a bill of goods. Trauma. Deep breath in. I release any and all trauma with sold a bill of goods. Unpredictable. Deep breath in. I release any and all feelings of unpredictability with sold a bill of goods. Deep breath in, breathe out, catch your breath. If you have some water, take a sip of water. Just take a slow breath in, a slow breath out. And take a deep breath in and hold it. I release any and all blocks with positive emotion with sold bill of goods. Belief. Deep breath in. I release any and all blocks with belief and with self-belief with sold bill of goods. Connection. Deep breath in. I release any and all blocks with connection with sold a bill of goods. Faith. Deep breath in. I release any and all blocks with faith with sold a bill of goods. Happiness. Deep breath in. I release any and all blocks with happiness with sold bill of goods. Kindness. Deep breath in. I release any and all blocks with kindness with sold a bill of goods. Openness. Deep breath in. I release any and all blocks with openness with sold bill of goods. Respect. Deep breath in. I release any and all blocks with respect with sold bill of goods. Support. Deep breath in. I release any and all blocks with support with sold a bill of goods. Worthiness. Deep breath in. I release any and all blocks with worthiness with sold a bill of goods. Just take a slow breath in, slow breath out, catch your breath. If you have some water, take a sip of water. Take a slow breath in. Think about the thought, addicted brain. Deep breath in and hold it. I release any and all negative emotion with addicted brain. Blame, deep breath in. I release any and all blame with addicted brain. Boredom, deep breath in. I release any and all boredom with addicted brain. Despair, deep breath in. I release any and all despair with addicted brain. Dread, deep breath in. I release any and all dread with addicted brain. Fury, deep breath in. I release any and all fury with addicted brain. Hate, deep breath in. I release any and all feelings of hate or any and all feelings of self-hate with addicted brain. Horror, deep breath in. I release any and all feelings of horror with addicted brain. Loathing, deep breath in. I release any and all feelings with loathing with addicted brain. Pressure, deep breath in. I release any and all pressure with addicted brain. Scars, deep breath in. I release any and all scars with addicted brain. Uncertainty, deep breath in. I release any and all uncertainty with addicted brain. Unhealed, deep breath in. I release any and all feelings of being unhealed with addicted brain. Worry, deep breath in. I release any and all worry with addicted brain. Take a slow breath in and a slow breath out. Catch your breath. You have some water, take a sip of water. Think about the thought, processed food. Deep breath in and hold. I release any and all negative emotion with processed food. Fear, deep breath in. I release any and all fear with processed food. Reproach, deep breath in. I release any and all reproach with processed food. Deep breath in. I release any and all terror with processed food. Deep breath in. I release any and all victimization with processed food. Deep breath in and breathe out. Catch your breath. Have some water. Take some water. A slow breath in. A slow breath out. Take a deep breath in and hold. I release any and all blocks with positive emotion with processed food. Appreciation, deep breath in. I release any and all blocks with appreciation with processed food. Celebration, deep breath in. I release any and all blocks with celebration with processed food. Deserving, deep breath in. I release any and all blocks with deserving with processed food. Fulfillment, deep breath in. I release any and all blocks with fulfillment with processed food. Hope, deep breath in. I release any and all blocks with hope with processed food. Value, deep breath in. I release any and all blocks with value with processed food. Take a deep breath in and breathe out. If you have some water, take a sip of water. Breathe in slowly, breathe out. Take a deep breath in and hold. I release all negative emotion with addiction to sugar. Abuse, deep breath in. I release any and all feelings of abuse with addiction to sugar. Deep breath in. I release any and all blame with addiction to sugar. Devastation, deep breath in. I release any and all devastation with addiction to sugar. Evil, deep breath in. I release any and all evil with addiction to sugar. Hypervigilance, deep breath in. I release any and all hypervigilance with addiction to sugar. Misery, deep breath in. I release any and all misery with addiction to sugar. Torture, deep breath in. I release any and all torture with addiction to sugar. Take a slow breath in and breathe out. Catch your breath. If you have some water, take a sip of water. Breathe in slowly. Breathe out. Deep breath in. Certainty. I release any and all blocks with certainty with addiction to sugar. Enjoyment, deep breath in. I release any and all blocks with enjoyment with addiction to sugar. Hope, deep breath in. I release any and all blocks with hope with just deep breath in and breathe out. Deep breath in. I release any and all hope with addiction to sugar. Peace, deep breath in. I release any and all blocks with peace with addiction to sugar. Validation, deep breath in. I release any and all blocks with validation with addiction to sugar. Just breathe in slowly, breathe out slowly, catch your breath. Deep breath in and hold. I am so happy and grateful. I am invisible to anyone who would hurt me. Deep breath in. I am so happy and grateful. Only people of love and light can see me or hear me or touch me. Deep breath in and hold. I'm so happy and grateful. I'm open to receiving better than I can imagine in all areas of my life. Take a breath in and breathe out. Catch your breath. As I count to 5, just come back to full awareness again. On the count of 1, just stretch your back, rotate your shoulders, feel energy moving through your body. On the count of 2, reach up to the heavens, stretch your fingers, feel energy tingling at the ends of your fingers. On the count of 3, cup your hands and bring them into your heart center, and just imagine a golden healing light flowing from your hands into your body, filling every cell of your body with love of the universe, with peace. On the count of 4, take a slow breath in, a slow breath out. On the count of 5, when you're ready, just open your eyes. Anybody want to share any feelings they had about the clearings, or did any words really resonate with you, or you're all falling asleep? Okay, I'm just going to stop the recording.